to your phone. You can't turn your phone while recording. Alright. Huh? Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Why is it? It wasn't like that the last time.
Do you have it that way?
Yeah, of course. That's the only way it fits in there. Hang on a minute, guys. Now my phone is acting like a nut. Rotate your phone. Now, I know. Maybe I had it the other way. How does it look on the screen?
It's like, I think it's delayed. It's crooked
Still?
sideways. Does it not give you the option?
What in the world? I might have to restart this, guys. Let's see. I know I did not have this phone up and down. Rotate your phone. You can't turn your phone while recording. Oops. What in the world? Hey, pay attention to that, please, so I can... What's it doing?
It's delayed, so. It's still sideways.
What? Oh, jeez.
What if you
I don't think it even fits in here the other way. Oh boy. Give me a second, guys. Oh. This must be something new they've done, because I swear this was not like this. This is about ridiculous. I'm gonna give it a...
Do you want me to turn it towards you so you can see?
No. I think this is gonna have to work. Okay. Sorry, guys. I really don't know why that is. I know we had it the other way last time. Okay. Hi. Please let me know how this sounds, if you guys can hear me okay. Give this a couple minutes for people to get on here. Howdy. Welcome to Conquering the Darkness. This is episode 2. Today I'm going to be discussing the physical effects of what pornography does to your brain. This is done through research from doctors. And I'm also going to be going over my testimony. I have dealt with pornography in the past. I don't necessarily identify with pornography addiction as far as what all this information is talking about, but the major effect that it had on me was lust addiction. Now, the pornography obviously fed into that, but I was, my addiction was lusting after women, fantasizing about women, and it just consumed my life. And it was that way for a very, very long time until Jesus set me free. So, quick introduction to what this is. This is something that God has put on my heart to do, to speak about this issue. I'm saying it's a disease that is just riddling the world. And, it doesn't get talked about enough. This doesn't really ever get talked about at all. And so, God has given me a boldness to speak up about this and to, present it, out here to people to show you that it's okay to talk about this stuff. Pornography addiction is what I call a secret sin. Lust is a secret sin because you can do it without anybody seeing, and it's all inside of you, It says in 1 Corinthians 6:18, flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against his own body. So this is how damaging this is, these sexual issues. Pornography addiction, lust addiction, sexual addiction, and of course that's just the you part of it. There's the effects of your addiction, is what we're seeing in the society. The rapes, the sex trafficking is the absolute the worst part about all of this. And the aggression towards women, because of how it changes you in your mind, when you're addicted to this sexual stuff. So, I'm trying to put a light out there. I'm trying to shine a light into this issue that we have going on in the world. And, this isn't a new thing. This has been going on since biblical times. We can read about these different stories in the Bible, with King Solomon. He had 700 wives. What drives somebody to, have that kind of a mind frame? It's an addiction. He was addicted to many foreign women. And, just like King David as well, he was God's chosen man to be the leader over his people, over the Israelites. And, he had an affair with one of his soldiers' wives, and, Bathsheba. And so then he had that soldier killed because he was trying to cover up his sin. But, it comes back to bite him in the butt later on. So anyway, so we've got this huge issue that's going on, and that's what this is about. These videos is to shine light on this subject. Okay, so as you can probably already tell, I do come at this from a biblical standpoint. I am a firm believer in God, and we're saved. Jesus Christ is our Savior. And so that's what I'm basing this thought process off of. Of course, I'm going to use information that I have found, studies from, doctors and scientists and psychologists and all that stuff. And, one of the major groups that I follow is Covenant Eyes, and that's an internet accountability program. It's a group of people, and this is all they're focused on is pornography and how to overcome it and how to protect yourself and all that stuff. And they have lots of great articles from their writers. And so one of the articles that I'm going to be going over today is called Porn on the Brain. And so I'm going to be reading a little bit from that and giving you some information that I've learned from that. So real quick, I just want to share with you guys, if you would please share this video, please share it and tag me in it, tag me or the Conquering the Darkness page, and or just on this video, comment that you've shared it. Please share it, and then comment that you've shared it so I can see. And I'm going to put all those people who share this video in a drawing, and I'm going to be giving you $50 in Chili's gift cards today. So I'm going to let that go through the weekend. So today and tomorrow only is your only opportunity to get in the drawing. And so the end of the day, Sunday, I'm going to be picking through those names, random drawing, and the winner will get $50 in Chili's gift cards. So please share it, and I'll put your names in there. So this is my beautiful wife, Kirsten. We've been married for, how long have we been married? 11 years? We've been married for 11 years. We've been together for 16 years. Okay, so we go way back. We have a little bit of history together. So for that reason, that's why she's in the video today, because I'm going to be discussing my testimony about what I've gone through, and she's a part of this. It affected her, just like it affects a lot of marriages out there. It affects a lot of people, and it even affects people before they're married, because people become addicted to pornography, and they take that addiction into a marriage, and that's why it's so damaging. I told you in the last video that the research has shown that over 50% of marriages over 50% of divorces involve some sort of addiction to pornography or some sort of sexual addiction. So I think this is so important that we shed the light on this issue, because it is affecting so many people. Now, it's not just marriages that this affects. This affects kids as well. And so I'm talking directly to parents out there today, okay? Now, this started for me when I was a kid, when I was single digits, even entering into, early teenage years. That's how long this has been, that it was going on in my own life. And so I am trying to speak to, not to talk down, but I'm speaking to the naive parents out there that think that their kids won't be affected by this. Now, 30 years ago, that may be truer, but today, with the way technology is, the way information is so easily accessible out there through your cell phone, through the internet, TV, the likelihood that your child could be exposed to pornography has increased 1,000-fold over the last, since 30 years ago. Okay, I believe pornography before I was born, was pretty much limited to, some Playboy magazines and, probably the occasional VHS, cassette that you would go and rent from, a pornography store or whatever. But it's not so today. Today, just about every single person who's walking around has access to the internet. via their cell phone or a tablet. I think a lot of kids these days, parents, allow them to have a tablet to play games and stuff on. And if you don't have some sort of parental controls on that, they could just as easily access the internet. And I'm just going to tell you, there is very easy access to a lot of pornography websites out there that are absolutely free. All you have to do is log on to it. A couple clicks, and your 8-year-old could be viewing pornography, unintentionally. And that's how it starts. Just one view. Now, scientifically, what these people are saying is that viewing pornography is just as addictive as drug use or alcohol use. Okay, so they're saying that the mental effects of it, the physical effects of pornography, viewing pornography on your brain is equivalent to being addicted to drugs. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little bit of reading here real quick. I'm gonna try to read through this pretty quickly, but so the first effect that it is having on you mentally is a desensitization. Okay, it's desensitizing you to pleasure. Okay, so this says, God wired the brain in such a way that it wants to remember where our natural drives are satisfied. If the body is thirsty, the brain's job is to remember in vivid detail where water can be found. Okay? And dopamine, okay, is a neurotransmitter responsible for helping us remember where to satisfy our natural drives. When sexually stimulated, dopamine is released into a region of the brain responsible for emotion and learning, giving the viewer a sense of sharp focus and an awareness of craving. They say, I have got to have this thing. This is what I need right now. Okay? Dopamine supplies a great sense of pleasure. The next time the viewer gets the itch for more sexual gratification, small packets of dopamine are released in the brain saying, remember where you got that fix the last time. Go there and get it. Okay? So in the context of a secure marital relationship, this push to return to the source of pleasure brings couples back together, again and again in sexual intimacy, building a bond of love. But in the context of viewing pornography, the effect is altogether different. Continued exposure to pornography, especially for long periods of time, releases surge after surge of dopamine, giving the brain an unnatural high. Okay? An unnatural high. The brain eventually fatigues, limiting the release of dopamine, leaving the viewer wanting more but unable to reach a level of satisfaction. This is called desensitization. Everyday pleasures begin to lose their luster, including sex, and the viewer expands their pornographic tastes and seeks out more novel or harder pornography to get the same arousal. The book of James in the Bible says sin begins in strong desire, but sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death. That's James chapter 1. Growing sin brings about all forms of death. Death to pleasure, death to relationships, and ultimately eternal death. Okay, so one of the first effects that we're seeing here is a desensitization to a natural pleasure that God has put inside of our bodies. Okay, so they're saying that this dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and when a physical act is portrayed, when you and your spouse are having sex, that dopamine is being released in your brain, and it's telling your body, look, you're bonding. You guys are bonding. This is your spouse. You guys are becoming one. Okay, and that right there is what keeps couples together. It's what encourages reproduction as well, because God tells us to go forth and multiply. And so in doing this, it's increasing that desire for you guys to come back together again and to reproduce, to have children. And so if you're getting that stimulus from pornography where there is no emotional attachment, okay, to you and a spouse, you're falsely tricking your brain that this is where you're getting that pleasure from and not from, another human being. So another thing that's doing is it's hypersensitizing you to lust. Okay, so they say while the brain becomes desensitized to pleasure in general, it becomes hypersensitized to various sexual triggers. Okay, this in a book called Wired for Intimacy, Dr. William Struthers offers a way to understand sensitization. He writes, like a path is created in the woods, with each successive hiker, so do the neural paths set the course for the next time an erotic image is viewed. Over time, these neural paths become wider as they are repeatedly traveled with each exposure to pornography. They become the automatic pathway through which interactions with women are routed. The neural circuitry anchors this process solidly in the brain. With each lingering stare, pornography deepens the Grand Canyon-like gorge in the brain through which images of women are destined to flow. This extends to women that have not seen naked or engaging in sexual acts as well. All women become potential porn stars in the minds of these men. So in other words, the more a person masturbates to pornography, the wider the neuro superhighway becomes, developing more and more on-ramps. Sexual cues are everywhere, and they all lead to the same place. The Apostle Paul vividly describes the never-ending lust people experience when cut off from a life of God. He writes, "They have given themselves over to sensuality so as to indulge in every kind of impurity." That's Ephesians chapter 4. One act of lust leads to two, two leads to four, and four leads to an all-consuming desire. Its appetite is never satisfied. And we can also see in the book of Proverbs, chapter 27, in verse 20, it says, "The eyes of a man are never satisfied." Okay? And I believe that's true for a lot of things, food, money, the just everything that's in the world. You're never satisfied. You always want more. And it's just as powerful when you're talking about, sexual things. So, the final step into this of what it's doing to your mind is crippling your willpower. Okay? So the process of sensitization and desensitization impacts the prefrontal cortex in the brain. As dopamine receptors degenerate in the brain, changes take place in the prefrontal lobes. This region of the brain is responsible for our willpower, regulating our behavior, and making decisions based on wisdom and morals. So we can see what this is telling us is that as these changes are starting to take place, we're building these on-ramps and stuff in our mind. It's beginning to affect our decision-making skills, okay? Normally, when emotions, impulses, and urges surge from the midbrain, the prefrontal lobes are there to exercise executive control over them. But when this region is weakened by continual porn use, willpower is eroded, and there is nothing to stop the sense of craving for pornography. As a result, the person experiences the urge not just as a desire, but as an intense need. So you don't only feel the desire for pornography, you feel that you need it, like you need air, like you need water. Okay, remember what we talked about with the desensitization. Okay, neuroscientists call this hyperfrontality. The person is no longer has mastery over his passions, but is a slave to them, right? And it is just as Paul says, as men and women become calloused, desensitized to God and all that is good, they also experience a great hardness of heart. They become slaves to various passions and pleasures. Our brains are designed by God to weigh consequences and situations and judiciously choose when to allow cravings through. But hyperfrontality means that the porn-saturated mind has a very limited ability to do this. The prefrontal region is one of the things that makes us humans unique, filled with rationality and conscience. For this reason, one could say that viewing porn in a very real sense makes us less human. Okay, so I just gave you guys a lot of information right there. I encourage you to go on to covenanteyes.com and just start searching through that yourself, okay? They have so much information on there about pornography and sexual addiction, and there's lots of great ebooks. It's all of the information on there is free. They also have a program or a software program that they offer for a fee, and it provides internet filtering on your mobile devices, your internet devices, so your phone, your computer, tablet, and they will filter information on there that could potentially be damaging to you, pornographic or the such, and so it also provides accountability programs as well. So if you are somebody who is struggling with pornography, you can set this up to where you have an accountability partner, someone that is that you feel comfortable confiding in, and it will send reports to them of what you've been looking at on the internet. So if you're trying to let go of this addiction, if you struggle with getting away from it, this is a good way for you to have accountability in your own personal life, to where somebody else can talk with you about why it is that you're looking at the things you look at, and it's supposed to help deter you from wanting to look at it. Anyway, so let's continue on here. I'm going to get into this is from the same book, Porn on the Brain, and this is talking about how porn warps your mind. All right. Now, what I'm about to explain to you is a research that was done by some doctors back in the 1980s is when this experiment was performed. Okay. So these two doctors, Dr. Zillman and Dr. Bryant, they were both one's with the Indiana University and another's with the University of Alabama. And so these guys, I did a little research on them, and they're really legit. They've done a lot of studying. They have a lot of studying as far as how media affects people and communications, how it affects people and all this stuff. So these guys did a study about pornography, extended exposure to pornography. So how it affects people's thinking, how it affects their sexual beliefs and their attitudes towards women, right? So remember, this was done back in the 80s, okay, when pornography was very limited. It was very limited back then. So for their experiment, they took 80 men and 80 women. They were college-age participants, and they were divided into 3 groups. So the first group was a mass exposure group. Okay, so they took one group and they showed them 36 non-violent pornographic films. Okay, and the second group was the intermediate group. They showed them 18 non-violent pornographic videos and 18 non-pornographic videos. And then they had a control group where they showed them 36 non-pornographic videos. Okay, so there's three groups here: the massive exposure, limited exposure, and no exposure. Okay, so the video they showed them, it was 4 hours and 48 minutes total of videos over a 6-week period. Okay, so what they showed them was about an hour long of videos each week for 6 weeks, right? This is just an hour a week for 6 weeks. And their results from this, their results that they found was pretty overwhelming. It was very fascinating what they've seen on here. So their first finding was that watching porn decreases our sexual satisfaction. They said they found a direct correlation between the amount of pornography a person viewed and one's overall sexual satisfaction in real relationships. Okay? So it said that participants in the massive exposure group were less satisfied with their intimate partners. They were less likely to be pleased with their partner's physical appearance, affection, and sexual performance. They concluded that porn consumers eventually compare their spouse, their boyfriend or girlfriend, with images of porn models. Okay? So, this study is way deeper than what I'm going into, but for the sake of time, I'm condensing all of this information. So, number 2, what they found was watching porn disconnects us from real relationships. So they said after the experiment, they concluded that the more porn someone saw, the more likely they were to prefer sex without emotional involvement. After watching less than 5 hours of pornography over a 6-week period, the massive exposure group was more likely to devalue marriage, the idea of having children, and the importance of faithfulness in a relationship. Okay, so I'm going to get into that more in the next video. We're going to get back into how it affects marriages, and I'm going to go over that area more. And it says they also showed a greater acceptance of casual sex. Now remember, this is just basing this off of porn consumption. And in this study alone, it was a very limited supply. Not like today, okay? Their next finding was that watching porn lowers our view of women, okay? Now, I think it's pretty evident that there is definitely, in our society today, we have a very big issue with what is going on as far as how men and women are perceived, okay? There's a lot of, what's the word? Twisting. I'm trying to think of a certain word here. The way we view love, the way we view marriage, it's become twisted, okay? And it's very evident that there is a big problem with, rape. Like I spoke earlier, one of the biggest issues I see is the human trafficking, okay? The simple fact that the women are being kidnapped, I say people, but it's mainly women, are being kidnapped, and young girls, to be held captive against their own will, to be sold as a commodity for sex, okay? I think that is probably the biggest effect of what's going on with how we are putting value on women. Okay, it's something that should not be so, but unfortunately, it's real. And I think the fact that it doesn't get talked about enough is part of the problem, because it's just happening, in our backyards, and it doesn't get talked about. So it just continues to being allowed to be, a real event. You can see on what I got on my sign here. It says "Stop the Demand." Okay, so what that means, stop the demand. The demand is, what did I just say? Sex trafficking. Okay, the demand is for paid sex. Okay, how do we stop this demand? It's by changing our mentality, changing what is going on in our brains, how we're viewing sex. Sex is not a commodity. Sex is something that is supposed to be done between a husband and a wife. Okay, that was God's intention. He created Adam and he created Eve, a man and a woman, and he told them to come together and to, bear children. Okay, and you're supposed to become one with your partner. Okay, and that is where sex is supposed to be confined to. But the way society is, the way the media portrays it as what I've just been explaining to you, it's there's nothing to it. It's a casual thing. Okay, you're desensitized to the pleasure of it. You become calloused to what love really should be. Okay, you become hypersensitized to the lust of it. Okay, so that was my problem. I was hypersensitized to the lust. Okay, so each and everything that my eyes would see, and even my own mind, I was hypersensitized to those things. So I was, in my mind, I was using sex as a commodity. Okay, I was using my own imagination as a commodity. Okay, and that is what's fueling the demand, is our own lust. Our lust is fueling the demand for sex trafficking. Okay, so if we can take care of this on a personal level, that will go away. Okay, and it needs to go away like yesterday. Okay, because first off, people should not be held captive against their will. Second, okay, we shouldn't be selling sex. Okay, there's a term I've heard for a long time in my life, and that's that sex sells, and not just in the sense of sex trafficking, but in media, in advertising, and I'm going to get into that in another video. Okay, sex does sell. How many billboards do you see going down the road with a woman in very seductive clothing? That's to get your attention, because the media knows that will get your attention because of our own lusts. Okay, so porn kills love. That's a given. I told you, desensitization. Fight the new drug. What is the new drug? It's pornography. Okay, I told you in the beginning, these doctors and psychologists are comparing the physical effects that go on in your brain to drug users, being addicted to heroin and cocaine. It has the exact same effect on your brain as if you were addicted to drugs. Okay, so fight the new drug. That's what that is. Okay, so we have a skewed view of women as a result of our own lust, as a result of pornography. Okay, so now I'm going to get into another finding. They said that watching porn desensitizes us to cruelty, right? So after they concluded the video segment of what they were doing, showing these participants these pornographic and non-pornographic videos, about a week or two after that, they took those participants into a separate study, a survey that they conducted, and it was, to the participants, it was there was no connection between the two studies. Okay, so they did not realize that there was a connection between the questions they were being asked and the videos that they watched. So what they did was, or what they found was that watching pornography also conditioned participants to trivialize rape. So trivialize means to make something less of an issue, right? So they trivialized rape. Participants were asked to read about a legal case where a man raped a female hitchhiker, and then they were asked to recommend a length for the rapist's prison sentence. Okay, so Kirsty, hold that up. Got this little graph here. This is the results. Okay, these are the results here. What's wrong with it?
It's frozen. I just want to make sure it's visual.
We're not frozen here. Sorry, guys. Making sure this thing's still on. You got it on your phone or no? You can lay it down. You can lay it down. Sorry, we're just trying to make sure this thing's still going, guys. Computer's frozen.
Just X out.
I can't. It's not Xing out. It's frozen. Is it still going?
Yeah.
Okay. Just keep it up on your phone, please. All right. So, anyway, so this was the results, right? Of this is after the people had watched those videos, and then they were taken in for another survey, and they were asked to give a length of months. This is in months that they recommended that the rapist should receive for, his crime. So as you can see here, we've got the males on one side and the females on the other. Now, the green bar is for the participants who watched non-pornographic videos. The black is it black? Yeah, the black is the ones that watched half porn, half non-porn. And the red is the massive exposure group. That was the people that viewed all non-violent pornographic films. Okay, so you can see here as far as the men, for the non-exposure group, they recommended 94 months, okay, for a sentence. And then that drops dramatically to only 50 months, almost in half, just from watching these pornographic films. So you can see that they're, how much less they, or I can say, let me say it like this, how more calloused they have become to, to the incident, okay? And of course you can see on the female side, the female participants, from the non-exposure group, they're way off the chart at 144 months, okay? Which is probably where it should be in the first place, all around the board. But even the women, okay, they got cut in half to only 77 months. And that was from the massive exposure group of the women who were viewing the pornography. Their judgment on this case for the man raping the woman, you can see how their judgment changed on the situation just because of a little bit of exposure to pornography. Okay, you can lay that down. Thank you. So, if we look at society today and see all of these atrocities that are happening out in the world, as far as these sexual incidents, I'm not saying that only porn is the problem, but just from a research that was done 30 years ago on minimal pornography use, we can see the effects that it has on a person's judgment, okay? Now, if we jump to today, this was a comment from Dr. Mary Ann Layden. This is in 2011. Okay, this is what she had to say about this experiment. She said, when this study was done, it was called the massive exposure group, seeing 5 hours of porn over a 6-week period. I now call that the Friday afternoon group, okay? Because what the most recent survey that they have on here was from 29,000 people. This is how large the survey was conducted to. 29,000 people. This is at North American universities, okay? Shows 51% of men, 51% of men and 16% of women spend up to 5 hours per week online for sexual purposes. Okay? And another 11% of men spend anywhere from 5 to 20 hours per week viewing pornography. Okay? That's today. And this is probably, this is actually probably from, 2011, honestly. So, if 5 hours of pornography does this to someone's judgment, what does 5 hours a week consistently do to a person's judgment? How much does that cloud somebody's view on how we should treat women and how we should treat sex and how we should treat real love the way it should be? Okay? And it's not only affecting, we're not only seeing it in rapes and sex trafficking, we're seeing it in all these other sexual identity issues that are happening out in the world today. And I'm not going to touch on that right now, and I know it's very controversial, but I think we can correlate that to this twisted view of what sex should be. Okay, I don't think that this is the only issue. I think it is affecting a lot of issues. So, let's see. Talked about that. Okay, I went over all that. So all that was to give you guys probably a culture shock as to what is happening out there, what is happening to probably you, to probably your husband or your wife or your kids or even your next door neighbor. We see all these crazy things going on, all these different, crazy sexual events that have been taking place. You see them in the news all the time. Teachers, having sex with their middle school kids or their high school kids. I don't know how many of them stories I've read. Of course, marriage is falling apart because of a husband or a wife cheating on the other one. How does it get to that point? I think that porn is one of the major contributors to that, to these twisted views on love, like I said. So in my own life, I wasn't viewing pornography at 8 years old, but what I did realize was I had an imagination, a very good imagination, and once my hormones began to kick in, as a kid, I very much became interested in women and females. And of course, then I discovered masturbation. And so, like I called it earlier, it's the secret sin, because you can, do these things in your bedroom, in, your own home where nobody can see you. And So I was free to do that because of the secrecy of it. Covenant Eyes has a very good example of how pornography is so addictive, and it's because of they liken it to a three-legged stool. Okay, they say that if you can take away one of those three legs, that you can it can help you to overcome your porn addiction. So the three legs of it is accessibility, how you can access it. And today, compared to 30 years ago, your accessibility has increased, 100-fold because it's everywhere. And there's so much of it out there. Affordability, okay, is another leg. And, there's millions of hours of free pornography on the internet right now. You can search it out for free. So it's extremely accessible. It's extremely affordable. The only other thing is the being anonymous. Okay, so the anonymity of it, and that's why I call it the secret sin, because you could be watching it on your computer at home and nobody knows the difference. You can watch it on your phone. When you're sitting in the coffee shop, if you have one of those little screen protectors where, if your phone's over here to the side, you can't really see what's going on that person's phone. It makes it that much easier for you to watch it. And that's why you're starting to see, I just seen this recently, some of these places, even Starbucks, is, they have the free Wi-Fi there. And what they're doing is they're setting up a filtering program on their Wi-Fi that blocks pornographic websites. So if you access the internet through their Wi-Fi, you will not be able to log on to those pornographic sites. And, which is a very amazing thing that they're doing. And, it should be like that all over the place. But, your anonymity. So if you had Covenant Eyes on their internet filtering software, or their, the accountability side of it, that's going to take that leg out of that stool. And so now that you're exposed and that you're out in the open, you've put yourself out there to, a trusted friend, you're going to be less likely to go after it, to seek it, because you're exposed. And so that's why they said that is probably the strongest form right there of overcoming it. Now, so like I said, very young, my mind was exposed to sexuality, to being sexually expressive, and exploring. My mind explored, my eyes explored, and of course I began getting heavy into masturbation at that point. And so once I started the youth group at my old church when I was a teenager, I started there at 13. I was 13 years old when I started there, and that's where I met Kirsten. Okay, so that's where she comes into the play. So at this point, at 13 years old, of course, my body has began going through puberty, and so my internal God-given hormones are beginning to circulate and go through my body. So now I'm already exposed to what sex is, and that dopamine that I've already began releasing, in my body because of my interest in it, and the masturbation, and the continued exposure, just like the hiker going through the woods. Now I'm in a youth group. You're like, oh, really, in church? Yes, in church. Okay, I told you in my last video about how affected people are in the church. Okay, it's like 70% of men in church view pornography. And you're like, what? There's like 300 people in service on Sunday. So you're telling me that, 250 of those men view pornography? According to research and surveys and studies, yes, that is the answer. I hate to break it to you. And it's not just men, it's women too. Of course, on a lower level, but about 60 to 70% of men in church view pornography. And I was one of those, okay? I wasn't actively viewing pornography at 13 years old, but my lust began to grow. I was becoming hypersensitized to lust because I was feeding it. Okay, so I'm seeing all these girls, in youth group, very attractive. God did a very good job when He created women. Very good job. Okay, and I hate to say it, but I think that's part of the problem. No, not that God messed up, but that He did too good. God did very good when He created women. I meet my lovely, beautiful wife here, and I'm just like, oh, it's like my dream come true. And in my mind, she was the girl that I couldn't have. I felt that she was the top girl in the youth group. And I was like, there's no way I could ever get with that girl. There's no way I could ever get with her. So, lo and behold, we get together, okay? And, I was super shy, super introverted. I did not have many friends, and I was extremely shy around girls, and I believe it's because of my, stigmatism of them, because of my own lust addiction, it created that separation from real relationships, okay? And so I think that's why I was so shy around girls. And so now me and Kirsten get together, and now I have something physical in my grasp, okay? And, I hate to break this to you, but at a very early age, we were already becoming sexually active, okay? At, what you said, 16? She was 16 years old. I was 17? Yeah, I was 17. She was 16. We started having sex. 16 years old, okay? Now, that's kind of a shock to a lot of you people out there, but it should be a shock to all of you parents, and to warn you to not be naive that this could be your kid, okay? And I'm gonna expose myself further and say that was having intercourse, actual sex, okay? We were being sexually physical even earlier than that, okay? As far as other things that are possible, without actually having intercourse. We were doing those things at an even earlier age. And I 100% contribute that to my lust addiction, okay? Because if I was taught at very early age that sex is supposed to be safe for marriage between a husband and a wife, and I was shown, the good example of what a husband and wife actually looks like, I may have been better prepared, for my hormones that were raging at, 13, 14, 15 years old, okay? But because I gave in to my lustful passion, I became a slave to it at that point. I was a slave to my lust, okay? So at that point, nothing was off limits. It was the only thing that was off limits was as far as I felt like I could push the boundaries of, the things that I did and said, okay? So me and Kirsten began dating. We began dating at she was 13 years old when we began dating. Okay, we met when you were 12, but began dating when you were 13 or when you were 12.
No, I was 13.
13. So, now I'm talking to you parents out there. Okay, I know a lot of you have kids at this age. Okay, 13 years old, right? And I was about to go somewhere with that. So 13 years old, we're dating. At 14, 15-ish ages, we began becoming sexually physical with each other. Touching, dry humping, that kind of stuff, oral sex. And so that's what led to, the actual physical part of it, having intercourse. And so, we wonder why we've got all these teenagers that are out there in high school getting pregnant. And it's because that nobody's teaching them the right way, what true love is and what we're supposed to be doing with it. And what's the time you got? Is it 2:30? I know. I'm just making sure that that's accurate. Sorry. We're wondering. Well.
Oh no, it's not. It's 3.
Okay. Yeah. So the computer's frozen. So anyway, and I think it's because there's not enough of this. What's going on right now? It's the exposure of the deviance of sexuality out there. What's the twisting of it? What's going on? People aren't getting trained up the right way, according to the Bible. Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. Okay, we're not doing that, folks. It didn't happen to me, and it didn't happen to her. Okay, and and I don't blame my parents directly, because I think it was just because they were naive to the fact of it. Because I'm not out, doing drugs and failing in school. They think everything's hunky-dory. Okay? You think because your kid's not addicted to drugs that they're just a good kid, but what happens when they're in school, you don't even know because you're not there to watch them, okay? So that's why it's so important to have such a strong relationship with your kids, not just to be their friend, but to be their parent and show them what is the right way, okay? So here I am at 17 years old, actively having sex, with my girlfriend. Of course, we were doing it safely, we were using protection. So, because I was too afraid of getting in trouble by getting her pregnant, okay? Because I couldn't imagine having a kid at 17 years old. But not everybody thinks like that. That's why there are pregnant teenagers out there, okay? So, Kirsten, did you ever, when we were teenagers and we were having sex, was there ever a point to where you were repulsed by the stuff that we did, having sex? Were you ever like, no, I don't want to do this, we should not be doing this?
I knew we shouldn't be doing it.
You knew we shouldn't be doing it,
yeah.
But you did it anyway, right?
Yeah.
Why? Why did you do it? Was it peer pressure from me?
Pretty much.
It's peer pressure, right? So, because of my lustful passion, okay, it created sort of a fear in you, right? I guess that's how it could be explained. It was a fear in you of, letting me down, maybe. Would you explain it like that, or would you explain it differently?
I wouldn't say a fear. I guess it was just maybe...
But what is peer pressure? Peer pressure is... Peer pressure
I guess
is
I've never really thought about it in that way.
Yeah, peer pressure is a fear of not being accepted or feeling pressured to do something that you normally wouldn't do, even though you know it's wrong.
Yeah. So,
I pressured you into doing it, even though it wasn't like I wasn't, I wasn't raping you. I never raped you because you willingly did it with me, okay? But because of the passion that I had inside of me, the lustful passion, you may have equated that with love, because of the emotional connection we got from having sex, because it's like it says in the Bible, the two will become one flesh. So we were coming together like a husband and wife are supposed to. Like I read you earlier, it says that creates that strong bond, and it brings you closer and closer together. We we were doing these things even though we knew it was wrong, and we were doing this while we were actively going to church on Sundays and Wednesday nights.
I don't think we really went as much as we originally did, though, at that point. I think we backed off starting,
Yeah, so there you go. So we could see another effect of this.
You had started working, and...
Yeah, I started working, and so because of this that we're beginning to get into, this is taking us away from God.
Yeah.
It's taking us away from our relationship with the Lord. So, what is it doing? It's, the more and more I'm seeking my own pleasure, the more and more I'm getting away from God. Of course, God is always there. He's always where He is because He never changes. But I was stepping away. She was stepping away. Okay? We were stepping away from God because of our choice of our lustful passion. Okay? So, now, we dated, of course, all through high school. And, I began working in a restaurant environment. Now, remember, we're just dating. I'm not engaged to her. Nothing like that. But because of how consumed I was in my lust for women, okay, and for sex, and, that desire, that dopamine release inside of my brain, it began to affect my thinking, and it began to affect my words, okay? So, in a restaurant, you've got the kitchen and you've got the waiting staff, okay? So majority of the waiting staff is female. So you could say over 50% of the population in a restaurant is female. Probably even more than that. Probably about 75% of the population of a restaurant is female. So here I am, completely consumed by my lust addiction, okay? And I've already began having sex at a very early age, and I'm around all of these women who are older than me. Majority of them are all older than me because it's older teenagers, younger women in their 20s and 30s, and I'm around them all the time because I was working almost full time at that point, almost 40 hours a week, sometimes even overtime, once I was a little older. And so, I was already becoming desensitized to the pleasure. I was becoming hypersensitized to the lust, to all the sexual cues. So I'm seeing all these women, and of course, I did not care what I was thinking because nobody knew what I was thinking. Nobody knew that I was fantasizing about them. So the more and more I did that, the more and more I began to devalue how I seen those women, okay? So because of my devaluing of them, what did I began to do? Does that sound right? What I began to do was become verbally open with these other females at the restaurant. I began flirting with them. Now you say, okay, flirting, but you're just dating your girlfriend, okay, whatever. But my flirting became like obsessive flirting. I would say things all the time to these waitresses because I was infatuated with beauty, and so the more and more I became comfortable around them, the more and more I would express, the more and more I would say to them. So, I began saying sexual comments to them, things that I knew that they would probably be okay with me saying because they were comfortable around me. I began pushing those boundaries around them. Okay, I was pushing those boundaries of what I could say to them. And I think subconsciously I must have knew that they probably fed off of it a little bit, because it was boosting their self-image, but it didn't matter to me really what happened, because they never really rejected it. They just kind of accepted it, whether they did or did not want it. So I became sexually explicit with my words to them, making flirtatious comments around them and saying different things. All the while, here I am dating her. Now, I'm saying this, and you already know that about me because I've already confessed that to you. But at the time, did you know that I was doing that?
Not the severity of it. Like, I didn't know the extent. I mean, I kind of, I guess, had deep down questions, I guess. Like, kind of questioned, like, what you were saying and doing, but I didn't really know.
Yeah. So, that continues in the secrecy. She didn't even know. So already at 16 and 17 years old, I'm already hiding stuff from her. We're not even married yet, and I'm already hiding stuff. Okay? So, that it pushes and pushes and pushes, and I continue to expand that boundary. And, at one point, we did break up, okay? And we broke up when I was a senior in high school. And it was only for about 2 or 3 months, and I was about to graduate. And, of course, that's when I enlisted in the Marine Corps. And because she said she was never going to marry somebody who's in the military. So I took that as my opportunity to go ahead and sign on up, because we were not together. Now, one of my biggest mistakes that I made while we were separated was I, got with one of the waitresses at the restaurant, because I had flirted with her so much that I guess she became, attracted to me as well. So while we were separated, I decided to capitalize on my freedom, and I got with another girl, and, we had sex, So I gave myself to somebody else as well, If I never would have had sex with her and only with Kirsten, and we're now married, I could say that physically I was never with anybody else. But I can never say that. I can never ever say that me and her are the only ones that have ever been with each other. And this is just on a physical platform, not a spiritual platform, where, what the Bible says is, even if a man looks at a woman with lustful intentions, he's already committed adultery with her in his heart. So, regardless of the fact of what I've done with my eyes and my mind, I was sexually active with another female. And so, of course, that didn't last very long. We separated, and then we got back together after that. So, of course, she knew about it. She still accepted me back anyway. So, I guess I talked her into it pretty good. I don't know. But, I get into the military, and, at this point, when I'm in the military, I began getting into pornography. That was really the start of my pornography there. That's why I said I wasn't really addicted to pornography. I was addicted to the lust of sexuality. So I'm just completely consumed by lust, and now I'm into pornography as well. And, I continue pushing those things farther and farther. What I say, what I think, who I look at. And, all the while, at this point, we don't even go to church anymore. We're done. We're out of church. And, so I walked away from God at that point. Now, all of this comes to a head at a certain point in my military career, where you know, we were married, of course, once I got in the military, and you know, we were happy enough to stay together with each other, regardless of what I was doing with my eyes. And but you know, I wouldn't say it was the best marriage ever, because we had fights. We had lots of fights, you know, not knockout, drag out fights, but you know, we argued about a lot of things in our lives. Of course, I was big into drinking then, so I was borderline about to be, you know, bad alcoholic, and you know, so now I'm involving alcohol, pornography, lust, and which is what a lot of the world does these days. It's natural, it's normal. That's what they say is, you know, that's the casual thing. So here we are, and maybe not be the best marriage ever, but we're still together, you know. So finally, I'm on deployment in Afghanistan, and I had a little pocket Bible. It was a New Testament, and you know, I just, for some reason, I made it a point to read my Bible every day. I just felt the urge to do it. I felt the urge to read my Bible every day when I got back to my tent. And so I began doing that day after day after day. And at one point, you know, when I was doing this, I felt the need to put down pornography, because I had, you know, a magazine or whatever. I had pornography on my little video game console, and you know, videos and stuff. And so I felt the need to stop doing that, and only just use my mind, only not to actually look at pornography anymore. And I did. I stopped doing that. And that was where my change began. It began there. It didn't, you know, that wasn't my freedom. That was where my change began. So when I came back to the States, my lovely wife, you know, she wanted to get back into church again. So we found a local church out there in California, and we began going back to church, you know, pretty regularly every Sunday. And so now I'm beginning to get the Word of God back into my life again. You know, I'm starting to turn my gaze back towards the Lord. And so, you know, little by little, I'm beginning to feel convicted by what I've been doing, you know, by my past. I'm beginning to feel that conviction, like, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right what I'm doing. So I get out of the military, and we move to Georgia, and we get into the current church we're in now, and we go through. It was a weekend retreat. It was called Encounter. We go through this program called Encounter that our church was having, and Encounter it's an
in-depth.
It's an in-depth, just a one-on-one. It's a you and God moment. You guys, you know, it's a you and God moment, and so you're getting back just to the feet of Jesus, and you're putting yourself out there to become one with God again. And so at that time, when we went through that, we went through it together, of course, as a couple, and I finally, I had that ultimate conviction. It's like, okay, I know I have a problem. I've had a problem for a long time. You know, I'm addicted to lust. And I had the feeling, just like one of my good friends just recently told me, he heard, he put it this way. I was going to God, not from a sense of, oh, this is wrong, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't do this, this is just, ooh, it's disgusting. I was coming to God from a sense of, God, I love this thing so much. I'm just so addicted to it. And I can't get rid of it. I cannot let go of it in my life. I can't get rid of it. And I came to God with that kind of a heart of, I love it, Lord, and I know it's not right, because I know it's not what you want. And I give it to you. Only you can take this from me. Only you can take this addiction of lust from my body, from my mind and my heart. And he did just that, because I laid myself down at his feet, and I let him take that addiction from me. He did. Okay? And from that point on, I was no longer a slave to my addiction. I was not a slave anymore. Of course, I will always be tempted by it, because the devil knows my past, and he always tries to bring up your past. Even if you overcome something, the devil doesn't forget. God forgets. When you ask for forgiveness, God forgets your sin, and he throws it in a sea of forgetfulness. But the devil doesn't. He holds on to it. It's a list of records that he keeps. And he's like, yeah, you see here? You see this? Yeah, this was you. Here's some temptation for you. Here's a piece of bait. Take this. So, the devil tries to bring up my past, but it doesn't control me. I control my mind. The Holy Spirit controls my mind. Okay? I allow God to control what I think and what I say and what I do. And ever since then, ever since that moment, I feel like mine and my wife's relationship, our marriage, has only gotten stronger and stronger since then. We have definitely, we're as close now as we've ever been. We've been together for 16 years, people. Most people in marriages don't last over 2 or 3 years in this day and age. We've been married for 11, and we're happier today than we've ever been. Okay? And it's because God is the center of our marriage. And that's how you can overcome your addictions as well. You have to give it to God. God has to take it from you. And you have to come at him with a heart of repentance and say, God, I can't let this go, because I love it, because I'm sinful, and I love this thing so much. If sin wasn't fun, you wouldn't do it. That's why people become addicted to the things that they do, whether it be food, money, drugs, alcohol, sex. You become addicted to those things because in the beginning it's fun to do. You wouldn't submit to those things if it wasn't fun. That's the lie of sin. That's the lie of these things, So, so anyway, that's my testimony of my life. And of course, there's way more to it than that. That's a pretty good picture of what I came through. I submit to you guys that if you are dealing with this, that you can go to God and just lay yourself at his feet and talk to him and tell him what's going on, and submit yourself to him, and he can bring you real pleasure, real ultimate satisfaction with your life, and you can be content with what you have, what he's given you with your wife or your husband. So also I want to say that you can accountability is very important. Okay, you cannot overcome it by yourself. Okay, I feel like my accountability was God, of course, but also my wife, because I became transparent to her. I revealed things to her that I had done in my past, things she didn't know about. So with my confession of my past to her, that was my accountability. Okay, I didn't have another man that I could talk to about my problems, because there really wasn't that person in my life. So me confessing to her about what I'd done, and of course she knows what we did together, but I confessed to her about what I did with my mind and my heart and my eyes. And because of my confession, okay, and opening up to her, that helped for me to further distance myself from that love, of that passion, from that addiction. It just continued to drive me away farther and farther from the desire to seek it out, the desire to need it, like I had trained myself to do for so many years. So, Kirsten, is there, from our past, okay, from, when we were, when I was, in it, and, of course, do you feel like my addiction affected you in any kind of a way? Did it affect you?
I mean, when it was going on, I didn't realize anything was going on. But I think now, looking back, I can see where it affected me and us.
In what ways?
Well, I mean, I feel like the way it affected me as your wife was, I didn't have that confidence. Like, I feel like, I guess because everywhere we went, I would watch who you'd be staring at and looking at, and I would start to compare myself. And like I said, most people just think, oh, everybody's insecure when they're a teenager and early adult, I guess, female. But I think when you have a spouse that was doing what you were doing, it doesn't help at all. I was starting to compare myself to the people you were looking at, and like, I don't have blonde hair, I don't have that, I don't have this. So I started to compare myself, and I never really felt confident in myself. But I didn't really think it was your fault. I just thought it was me. I always thought it was just something that I struggled with. But now I've realized that I don't deal with that now. Like, I don't have that insecurity or feel like I have to measure up, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So you were feeling like it was your fault for who I was looking at, because you didn't feel like you compared good enough to the other people.
I guess so. I guess I felt maybe I was lacking something, not realizing it.
Yeah.
Because I really, and I didn't even realize all this was going on up until I told you. What was it? Within the last 6 months, I started putting the pieces together. Like, oh wow.
Yeah.
I guess that really kind of went with it.
So, my addiction gave you an extra heightened sense of insecurity about yourself. Yeah. So it affected you mentally by what I was doing with my eyes and my mind.
Yeah, because every time we would go places, you looked at everybody, like males or females. Like, you just you're a people watcher. So, I would watch who you would be watching, and I don't do that now. So
why don't you do it now?
I guess because I don't care, and I just feel secure in our relationship with myself.
What made you feel that security, though?
I guess just having, I guess it was just our bond growing from you being transparent and knowing that.
My transparency.
Yeah.
So me being open about my struggle to you, my wife, who, I've hid things from a lot of times in my life. Now I'm being open and honest and transparent with you. That brought us closer together.
Well, but I guess it wasn't just you being transparent, but knowing that you were not wanting to be like that anymore. You were trying.
Yeah, I feel like that's still part of transparency.
Well, I know, but
you were seeing fruit.
Person,
you were seeing fruit of it.
Yeah, because a random person could just tell their wife, like, I do this and not matter.
Yeah, so I wasn't just talking the talk. I've been walking the walk.
Yeah.
Not toot my own horn, but you were seeing physical evidence of what I was telling you.
Right.
So I'm saying to you that I've given this to God, and I'm not desiring it anymore. And I'm also showing that to you by being open and honest, transparent, and by what I do with my eyes, And so, unfortunately, I can't change the past. I can't change what I have done, but from here on out, I can change what I do and what I see and what I say, and that's why, being very upfront about it in the very beginning, having no secrets, and of course giving it to God, that's what's going to help you to overcome it. Is there anything that you feel like you could say to wives who might be dealing with a husband who looks at other women or looks at pornography? Is there anything that you can say to them that would help them to deal with this issue? Like, is there things that they could do, or is there a thought that they can have about what they can do to maybe to help their husband? How can they help their husband get over this? I know this is kind of a general question, but
I was pretty much a nagger, so.
You were a nagger, yeah. So you didn't let up on me.
No.
Yeah, you were constantly reminding me of, what this is doing.
You guys are gonna hate me for saying that, but.
Yeah. So now I know that can have a negative effect as well. If you just continue to put down and berate your significant other because of their addiction, they're going to put walls up, okay? They will put walls up, and they're going to shut you out, and they're not going to care. But if you do it in a sense of love, if you do the nagging in a sense of love, so to speak, I think that it is very helpful, to help them to see how it affects them, the other person. It's very important that the addict see how it's affecting their spouse, okay? Because if they don't see anything and they're like, oh, everybody's good, it's not hurting anybody. Yeah, well, why are there people being trafficked for sex? Not because people are happy in their relationships.
Well, most people are just going to be blinded until they're out of it. They're not going to see what it's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, even with us, we didn't realize, or at least I didn't realize the severity of it until we were out of it.
Yeah, until the veil is lifted.
Yeah.
That's what the whole point of these videos are. Conquering the darkness. We're shining a light in this evil that is taking place in the world, with the sexual immorality. So, anyways, I was trying to keep this video at an hour, and that didn't happen. That's fine.
Blame the clock.
Huh?
You can blame the clock.
Yeah, I blame the clock. The computer froze up. But guys, I'm going to go ahead and end this here. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching this. I really hope that this has helped somebody who was actively watching this. And feel free to message me privately if you want. If you do message me, I will, be very, what's the word? Not secretive. I will be careful with your information. I'm not going to go and start blabbing around town about what you've got going on. But, if I can help you in any way, if you have questions, feel free to message me. I'll help you in any way that I can. I will say this openly, that I am no kind of a licensed, I'm not a licensed, pastor. I'm not a psychologist. I have no sort of special training for this. I'm just a normal human being with a life experience that I overcame thanks to the power of God. And I'm trying to help other people overcome this issue of lust addiction, pornography addiction, sexual addiction. And so, my idea is to do these videos so that you guys can share them, share it with your friends, so that they can see that you can overcome this, that you're not alone, you're not the only person, that there's way more people out there that are being affected by this than you think. And it could be somebody in your own home, and you don't even realize it. Okay? So this is to expose it. I'm exposing the darkness. We're shining God's light, and we're exposing the darkness, okay? And so please share this video. Tag me in your share, or tell me on this video that you've shared it, and so that I will know that. And I'm going to put your name in a drawing tomorrow night. I'm going to do the drawing, so do it quickly, please. But I'm going to give the winner, it's going to be a random drawing, $50 in Chili's gift cards, okay? And this is just to show you how important this is to me, okay? How important this issue is. You know, I'm giving my own money away to this because it's so important that it makes me sick to know that so many people are consumed by this, and that so many marriages are failing because of this issue alone, okay? And I'm just sick and tired of it, okay? There is a way out. God is the way, and there are steps that you can take to protect yourself from the dangers of pornography and lust, sexual addiction. And so anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next month with the video. We're going to continue on the topic of how pornography and lust affects marriages, and my buddy Kevin Spates will be back with me on that video. So thank you guys, and God bless you.